You've probably heard it 1,000 times that only 21 million Bitcoin will ever exist in the world, and it's part of what makes it so valuable. But here's something most people never think about. What happens when all 21 million Bitcoin are mined? This is going to happen in exactly 115 years. Sounds distant, right? But here's the twist. The real shockwave will hit us much sooner. In just 12 years, a silent countdown could tip Bitcoin into either unstoppable dominance or irreversible collapse. There's a ticking clock that's quietly changing the economics behind every block, every miner, and every transaction. Most holders don't see it. But when that moment comes, it won't matter how much Bitcoin you own, if the network itself isn't secure. So, before we dive into where Bitcoin is headed, let's quickly decode one thing: the Bitcoin mining process. Section 1. How Bitcoin mining actually works. Mining is the process by which new Bitcoin are created and transactions are confirmed. Miners use powerful computers to solve complex mathematical puzzles. When they solve one, they add a new block to the Bitcoin blockchain. In return, they receive a reward in Bitcoin and some transaction fees. This process of Bitcoin mining doesn't just create new coins, but it also keeps the network alive and tamper-proof. Eventually, it is essential for the security purposes of the entire system. As of 2025, 19.6 million out of 21 million Bitcoin have been mined, which makes about 93.3% of the total supply. But here's the twist. Every 4 years, the amount of Bitcoin miners receive per block is cut in half. This is called the halving, and it's built into Bitcoin's code. But why is that? Section 2. Why Bitcoin miners are getting squeezed. Halving isn't just a random punishment. It's a deliberate feature baked into Bitcoin's code to control inflation. Just like how central banks try to manage the money supply, Bitcoin does it mathematically. By cutting rewards every 4 years, it slows down the rate at which new Bitcoin enters circulation, creating scarcity and helping preserve long-term value. So far, 4 halvings have already occurred: in 2012, 2016, 2020, and 2024. Here's the terrifying part. After the April 2024 halving, miners who were earning 6.25 Bitcoin per block, now they get 3.125. That's a 50% pay cut overnight. On the other hand, the cost to mine just one Bitcoin has exploded from $6,252 in 2020 to over $26,000 in 2024. That's a 319% increase, while rewards keep getting slashed in half. That means mining Bitcoin is now like running a business, where your costs quadruple, while your income gets cut in half every few years. Surprisingly, after the 2024 halving, miner revenues dropped 46% in 1 month. From $1.78 billion in April to $966 million in May. Nearly half their income vanished in 30 days. So why are they still mining? Because they believe transaction fees will eventually take over as the main source of income. But that belief comes with major risks. Section 3. The 5% gamble that could kill Bitcoin. Here's another reality check. If all 21 million Bitcoin are mined, the entire system that keeps your Bitcoin safe will depend on something that makes up less than 5% of miners' income today, that is, transaction fees. Right now, when you send Bitcoin, you pay a tiny fee. That fee goes to miners along with their block reward. But here's the nightmare scenario. When block rewards hit 0, those tiny fees become the only thing keeping Bitcoin alive. And it would make up 100% of a miner's income. Let me put this in perspective. You're running a restaurant, and 95% of your money comes from one mega customer who pays your bills every day. One day that customer says, "I'm never coming back. Good luck surviving on the 5% you make from everyone else." That's Bitcoin in the future. And if people don't start paying way higher transaction fees, the miners will just leave. And when miners leave, Bitcoin dies. But wait, it gets worse. Transaction fees are completely unpredictable. During cryptomania, people paid $200 just to send $10 worth of Bitcoin. But during bear markets, those fees can drop to under $1. So Bitcoin is betting its entire future on fees that could be $200 one day and $1 the next. Isn't it too volatile? But the real fear is that if people aren't willing to pay enough transaction fees, miners may stop mining altogether. And without enough miner participation, Bitcoin's network becomes vulnerable. Transactions slow down, confirmations take longer, and the risk of a 51% attack grows. A 51% attack happens when one group controls the majority of mining power, letting them manipulate transactions or block confirmations. It's like letting one player in Monopoly rewrite the rules mid-game. However, Bitcoin does have one built-in buffer: the difficulty adjustment. Every 2 weeks, the network recalibrates how hard it is to mine based on how many miners are working. If lots of miners quit, mining gets easier, helping others stay profitable. But the problem is that only works if some miners stay. If fee incentives vanish entirely, even difficulty adjustments won't be enough to keep the network secure. Some experts even argue that Layer 2 solutions like the Lightning Network might save Bitcoin from dying. The Lightning Network helps by allowing fast, cheap transactions off the main blockchain, but it reduces on-chain activity, meaning fewer fees for miners who secure the actual network. While everyone's panicking about fees, something sneaky is happening in Texas that could save Bitcoin's future. Section 4. Bitcoin miners and the energy market. In Texas, miners have discovered a new way to stay profitable, even without relying solely on mining rewards. Here's how it works. During times of peak energy demand, the local grid pays miners to shut down their equipment to help stabilize power supply. This means that miners are simply making money by not mining. It's like getting paid to not work. Some are even earning 10% of their revenue this way. They're not just Bitcoin miners anymore, they're energy market players. As renewable energy explodes, wind, solar, and hydroelectric power, this opportunity grows. These miners have found a way to make money, even when Bitcoin mining becomes unprofitable. But what if the real plan is for miners to become energy traders who just happen to mine Bitcoin on the side? What if Bitcoin mining becomes secondary to energy arbitrage? That's either genius or the beginning of the end of Bitcoin as we know it. Section 5. The whale survival strategy. While it's assumed that all Bitcoin will be mined by 2140, it's interesting to see that Bitcoin holders, countries, billionaires, or whales are not just going to watch their wealth evaporate in 2140. For example, El Salvador owns over 2,800 Bitcoin. If Bitcoin becomes worthless because miners quit, their entire strategy collapses. Same with MicroStrategy, which owns over 190,000 Bitcoin, or the thousands of investment funds loading up on Bitcoin. When 2,140 arrives and miners start quitting because the fees aren't enough, these whales won't just cry about it. They'll start their own mining operations, not to make money from mining, to protect their existing wealth. Imagine owning a vault full of treasure in the middle of nowhere. You'd better believe you'll hire your own guards when public security walks out. That's exactly what whales will do. Launch mining ops, not for profit, but for preservation. But this means Bitcoin's future depends on the ultra-wealthy deciding it's worth protecting. If they move on to something else, Bitcoin dies. If they decide to protect it, Bitcoin survives, but becomes completely controlled by the richest people on Earth. Either way, regular people like us are just along for the ride. Section 6. The role of renewable energy in Bitcoin survival. There's one group of miners who might survive the 2140 apocalypse, the ones with basically free electricity, and their numbers are growing fast. Solar farms in deserts, wind farms in the middle of nowhere, hydroelectric dams with excess power. These energy sources are creating stranded electricity that costs almost nothing. Miners who can access this power can survive even if Bitcoin mining becomes barely profitable. As renewable energy capacity explodes globally, more miners get access to near-free electricity. These miners become the backbone of Bitcoin's security, not because they're the most efficient, but because they're the last ones standing. But here's the catch. This scenario creates a Bitcoin network controlled by whoever controls cheap renewable energy. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's definitely not the decentralized paradise Bitcoin promised. Section 7. Why the 2030s matter more than 2140. Here's what's going to blow your mind. The next 10 to 12 years will determine Bitcoin's fate, not the next 115 years. Why? Because each halving makes the transition to fees more critical. We just went through the 2024 halving. The next one is 2028, then 2032, then 2036. By 2036, block rewards will be so small that fees will need to carry most of the load. That's only 12 years from now. Not 115, 12. If Bitcoin hasn't figured out sustainable fee revenue by 2036, it's probably game over. The network will start its death spiral decades before the last Bitcoin is mined. So when someone tells you Bitcoin's 21 million coin limit is a problem for the year 2140, they're wrong. It's a problem for the 2030s. Section 8. 3 possible scenarios for Bitcoin's future. So what actually happens? There are 3 scenarios, and they're all crazy. Scenario 1. The fee explosion. Bitcoin becomes so valuable and useful that people pay massive fees just to use it. Every transaction costs hundreds of dollars, but people pay it because Bitcoin is worth millions per coin. Miners get rich, Bitcoin survives, but only the wealthy can afford to use it. Scenario 2. The whale takeover. Fees stay low, so the ultra-wealthy take over mining to protect their investments. Bitcoin survives but becomes completely controlled by governments, investment funds, and billionaires. It's secure, but not decentralized. Scenario 3. The renewable revolution. Cheap renewable energy makes mining profitable even with low fees. Bitcoin survives but gets controlled by whoever controls the cheapest energy sources. It's decentralized geographically, but concentrated among energy companies. Notice what's missing? There's no scenario where Bitcoin just works perfectly for everyone forever. Every ending involves some kind of compromise or consolidation. Section 9. The Scarcity Paradox. Here's the thing nobody wants to admit. Bitcoin's 21 million coin limit, the thing that makes it valuable, might also kill it. By creating artificial scarcity, Bitcoin made itself incredibly valuable. But that same scarcity means it will eventually stop paying the people who keep it secure. It's like building a castle on a foundation that's programmed to disappear. The irony is perfect. Bitcoin's greatest strength might become its greatest weakness. But here's what'll really mess with your head. All of this might not matter at all. If Bitcoin becomes the global reserve currency, if it replaces gold, if countries build their entire monetary systems around it, then protecting it becomes a matter of national security. Fees, mining costs, energy consumption, none of it matters when the alternative is economic collapse. The question isn't whether Bitcoin will survive until 2140. The question is whether Bitcoin will become so important that survival is guaranteed, or whether something else will replace it long before the last coin is mined. Section 10. What should you be thinking about now? So what does this mean for you? If you own Bitcoin, you're essentially betting that one of those 3 scenarios works out. If you don't own Bitcoin, you're betting that none of them do. But you don't have 115 years to figure it out. You have maybe 12 years before this becomes a real problem. And the decisions being made right now, by miners, developers, governments, and whales, will determine which scenario we get. The question is, are you ready for what comes next? What do you think will happen? Will Bitcoin survive on fees alone, or is this the beginning of the end? Drop your wildest predictions in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe because this story's just getting started. Thanks for watching.